Hello, everybody. Good evening, good day to all of you, wherever you are. I hope you are all doing very well, and welcome to the latest episode of the Ask Abhijit show. Uh, so let's see who all is there. As always, as you know, today is a live chat Q and A session. I'm going to take all the questions from the live chat so that it gives lots of you the opportunity to interact and ask questions. So we're going to do that. But before we do that, let's get into the. Let's see who all is there on the live chat. Let's see the attendance. I hear that the IPL is on, right? So I think our attendance is going to take a hit from that, but I understand. I also have been a huge sports fan, so I totally understand that. So let's see who all is there. I can see Tarun Khatri, Once Upon a Dime as Minor, Tanmay Deshpande, Animesh Vishnu Mohanan, Aman Pandey, Naman Panchal, Yasin Subair, Realm of Curiosity, Raja Kumar, Nitin Singh, Melvin, Ashish, Jai Dikshit, Martian, Codename 175, Aryan Peekaboo, Makarand Mokashi, Aman Kumar, Kaustub, Animish, Malik Sayed, Raja Sekharan, Vichattu, Feminist Slayer, VRV, Jasman Raj Singh, Shaurya Sharma, Chirag, Nuro, Satej, Crazy Brain, Captain Anonymous, Sumedha, Dighe, Kuldeep, Potato Praiser, Prachit Agarwal, Atish Digpal, Prasun Singh, Chirag, Utkarsh, Abhishek, Shri Genghis Khan, Shubham Munde, Ishan, Shashank, Chirag, Akshat, Chiching, Shamik, Unhuman, Pankaj Kumar Tyagi, TDC, Adarsh Tapalial, Deepak, Le Editor, Aman George, Karthik Jain, The Bong Star, Amit, Vedant, and so many people, so many people. I will not be able to greet you all individually, but I greet you all collectively. Thank you so much for being on the live chat, on the live stream. So, with that done, let us get into some questions. If you have questions, I can see Tejas, Manu Gowda, Shivam, and many more. Okay, let's get into the questions now. So if you have questions, I'm sure you all have questions. That's why you're here. So let's get going with it. Let's have your best questions and let us field them. So okay, let's take this one. Sumit says we have seen that President Biden is brainless in terms of his policies, and probably so the so-called deep state is in full control. Is this not similar to Pakistan in a way? Yes, I have remarked upon this. See, the president of the US, Mr. Biden, is well, as everyone can see. I mean, there was a fable or something, right? The emperor has no clothes. It's like that. I mean, everybody can see, even a 3-year-old can see that this guy is not in full control of his mental capacity. He's just too old. He's past a certain stage, right? So clearly, he's not in a position to administer himself, let alone administering an entire nation. And Kamala Harris is clearly not competent at all. Uh, so and still somebody is running the nation, right? So most likely it's what they call the establishment and what's colloquially called the deep state. That's what it is. That's what's running the nation. The nation is not running itself. So yeah, and as we recently saw, the Biden administration, whoever that is, wanted to present a dossier of Russian alleged war crimes to the International Criminal Court. And so the White House wanted to do this, and the Pentagon blocked the White House from doing it. So that demonstrates visibly that the Pentagon has more power, way more power than the White House. The Pentagon can block the elected government of the US from doing something. Yeah. I mean, technically, or supposedly the US president is supposed to be the boss of everyone. How can someone block the US president, supposedly the most powerful person in the world, man in the world? It's always been a man. So clearly, the Pentagon, which is the defense establishment, which is also colloquially called the deep state, is more powerful, way more powerful than the White House, than the democratically elected government, which tells you that the US is a democracy kind of in name only, and there is a deeper and stronger power at play. So the relationship between the Pentagon and the White House is very similar to the relationship between Rawalpindi and Islamabad. Rawalpindi is the army headquarters. That's where the army is based. Islamabad is where the government allegedly resides, but we all know that it's the army that's in power, which means that Rawalpindi is more powerful than Islamabad. And similarly, we seem to have a very similar situation in the US, that the Pentagon is way more powerful than the White House. So the US is like a super Pakistan. That's what it is. But it's much better done, and it's yeah. So we know we know the differences. So yeah, interesting question that you ask, and I totally agree with what you say, sir. Um, Robin Brar says, "What are your thoughts on the report from the IAF that Russia will not meet the delivery of all S-400 systems? Does that mean that India will reorient towards the West?" India is multi-oriented, multi-aligned. India is not non-aligned, and India is not an ally of Russia. But yes, obviously, India and Russia have a significant amount of shared interests and convergence in geopolitical interests and approaches, which is why India and Russia get along so well, because it just makes sense. uh, the logic of strategy says that it makes sense for India and Russia to work together, and you can say they're aligned in a lot of things. Now, one does hear the report that Russia, I'm not sure it's from the IAF or from where it is, but Russia, the delivery of the S400 systems, some of them, is most likely going to be delayed. There is this enormous war effort going on in Russia. There's manpower needed for the war effort, and resources are needed for that. So that's going to impact the delivery of S400 systems to India. It doesn't mean that Russia will cancel the deliveries. We've already paid for that. It means the deliveries will most likely be delayed by a certain amount of time. That's what it means. And just because your supplier isn't able to supply what you need in a certain time frame doesn't mean that you abandon the I mean you totally reorient your strategy just because something like that happened. No, our interests are long term interests. You don't realign them because you get emotional when someone can't meet a certain requirement. We know why why the situation exists. We understand that this could happen and why this is happening. So it's fine. uh, we definitely will exhort and urge Russia to deliver the system. We understand there's a delay, but deliver it as soon as possible. Let us know how much longer it'll take, and that sort of thing. But it doesn't mean that we're going to abandon Russia and stop, uh, ask them to cancel the deliveries and then go for the US version, which is an inferior version and all that. No, that's not how it works. Our interests are long term interests, and we don't just turn around and spin around on the drop of a hat when something happens. That's not how it works, right? Okay. Okay, Naman says, please explain the partition of Germany after the Second World War, East Germany and West Germany. Okay, so that gives me the opportunity to bring out the map because we love the map. So, where is Deutschland? Germany. I'm sure we all know where it is, but let's orient ourselves. This is India, we go westwards. We cross the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, Afghanistan. We cross our Persian neighbors. We come into the Kavkaz region. You go westwards, there is Ukraine. And here now, west of Ukraine, you have Poland, and west of Poland, you have Germany. So this is Germany, and Germany was partitioned into East Germany and West Germany after the end of the Second World War. So that's the thing. That's the question. That's what the question is about. So what happened exactly? How did Germany get partitioned? So what happened is this. Germany, as we know, were the bad guys during the Second World War. Adolf Hitler, one of the greatest evil guys. That's what the West portrays him as. And clearly, he did a lot of evil deeds. He killed, I don't know how many million Jews and Romani people, at least 4 million one hears. So, yeah. And Germany, well, it was the aggressor. It tried to fight everybody at the same time. So at the end, Germany lost. Now it did not lose that easily. It was very hard to beat. It had at one point in time taken over almost all of Europe. It had rolled over, steamrolled France in its blitzkrieg, and it had launched an invasion of the USSR. And because of a tactical or strategic no strategic mistake, that's why they eventually lost. Operation Barbarossa eventually became a disaster because of a strategic mistake. They went for the south instead of going straight for Moscow. So eventually the tide turned. The Americans entered the fray from the west, from England, from the UK. They crossed over the Normandy landings, which are like the D-Day, very famous. There are movies made about that. And then they inched west to eastwards from France. But the majority of the fighting in Europe was done by the Russians, and the majority of the dying was done by the Russians. The Russians were able to beat Germany only at the expense, at the cost of oceans of blood. They threw incredible amounts of human lives into the meat grinder, and that's how they were able to beat the Nazis. So most of the fighting was done by the Russians, but the credit, the Americans take it because of Hollywood and propaganda and all that. The Russians clearly are not that good at propaganda. So they liberated much of Europe. And what happened is that the eastern part of Germany was, you could say, liberated or conquered, whatever, by the USSR. And the western part kind of was taken over by the Allies, which is the US and its minions. Now, once Hitler was defeated, there was the matter of the Asia Pacific theater, which is Japan, which was dealt with differently, separately. The Americans tested two nuclear weapons on Japanese civilians. We know that. But so what happened is that once Hitler was defeated, Germany, have a certain portion of Germany was in the possession of the USSR, and a certain portion of Germany was in the possession of the US and its allies. Let's call them allies. And that became kind of the partition. So as soon as the Second World War ends, despite the US and the USSR being allied in the Second World War to defeat Hitler, the Americans immediately declared that now we are in a Cold War and the USSR are the bad guys because communism is evil. And then we had the beginning of the Cold War immediately, you could say, more or less immediately after the end of the Second World War. So that dividing line in Germany became the partition line. And soon you had the Iron Curtain coming up, and you know what, the entire sequence of events. So that is how Germany got partitioned. One part of it remained with the USSR, and that ideology was applied there. Socialism, communism, all that was applied there. And the other part became the opposite of that, and it took up the US style of functioning and all that. So that's how the partition happened. And as we know, it Germany remained divided until the early 1990s, until the Berlin Wall was eventually brought down, which was actually the collapse of the USSR itself. So that is the story, my friends. That is the story. Now let's see who else has questions. Let us see. Let us see. Okay, let's take this one. I can see a lot of geopolitical questions. Piyush Melody Boy says, does Russia really love India, or is it just posing because they need allies and a big market to sell things to in this Ukraine war? So, listen, if we look at, see, we have to examine history from a certain perspective. So when we take photographs, in case some of you are into photography, you will know that you, for a certain camera, you have a whole variety of lenses you can buy, and each lens serves a certain purpose. You take a subject, you put it in front of you, you take a certain lens with a certain focal length, you will see a certain perspective of the image. You take a different lens, you will see a different perspective. Some lenses make it very flat, some lenses give you a blurred background, and so on. I will not go into that, but that's how it works. Similarly, when you look at history and geopolitics, the what you understand of it depends on the lens that you're using to take a look at it, So if you use a very short lens, let's say very short term memory kind of lens, then you will get a certain picture of things. If you take a longer term perspective, a longer lens, then you will see a different perspective. So the question is, does Russia really love India? So if I take a short lens and take a look at what happened in the past 5 or 10 years, I will get a certain perspective. See, and it's a good perspective, it's very instructive. So in 2017, I think, or 20, whichever year it was, 5 6 years ago, 7 years ago perhaps, the Russians were conducting military exercises with Pakistan. It was called the Druzhba exercises. Druzhba means friendship in Russian. So there was Druzhba 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, if I am not mistaken, but there has been no Druzhba 2023. And I think there's been no Druzhba 2022 either, most likely, if I'm not mistaken. So so how come Russia was kind of uh, being friendly with Pakistan, and why is it not happening now? Why have those exercises, those military exercises stopped and all that? So the question is a very good question. And we have to look at it from a long term perspective, because that's when we start seeing the patterns. So, Russia in geopolitics, there is no love. There is no love in geopolitics. All right. And there is no friendship in geopolitics. Geopolitics is all about self interest, it's all about your narrow national interest. And when you have two nations whose national interests align and converge, it is natural for them to work together. And when you have two nations whose national interests clash, then they simply can't work together. So, how do you know whether whether two nations will have an alignment of national interests or a clash of national interests? One of the best ways of understanding that is just to take a look at the map. So, let me show you the map, which will give us an idea of what is the situation. So, let's take a look at the map. Here's the map. So, as we can see, India and China have a significant long shared border, because we allowed China to conquer Tibet and occupy Tibet in 1950. Our great Prime Minister, the great magnificent Mr. Nehru, did that. So, India and China have a long, undemarcated border, which makes India and China, it makes it impossible for India and China to be allies. When two large nations have a shared border, common border, it means that they can never be allies, and they will always have some kind of tension and some kind of hostility. Similarly, the Russians and the Chinese have a long border, which tells you that the Russians and the Chinese are also not natural allies, they're natural adversaries. Now, India and Russia don't have a shared border. India and Russia both want a stable and secure Central Asia. India and Russia both see China as an adversary for very good reason. I mean, I'll not go into the history of the Russia China thing, but yeah, it's there. So, from these perspectives, if you look at all of this from the big picture perspective, from the long lens of the past 100 years, then you will see that Russia and India are actually natural allies. We will not use the term ally, okay, but it's kind of like that. It's kind of like a, a de facto unwritten alliance kind of thing in certain ways. We try to keep it under wraps, you could say. So, there's no love here. Love happens when there is shared blood or shared culture. Okay, that's when love exists. So, when it comes to the nations of the Indian subcontinent, yeah, we could actually say that there is love in some sense. I would not say that there is love between India and Pakistan, but clearly one could have an affectionate perspective from India's perspective towards Nepal or Sri Lanka or Bhutan or Myanmar. And well, if the other nations behave, we will be affectionate towards them as well. So, love only exists when you have shared blood or shared culture. When it comes to Russia, we don't have shared blood and we don't have shared culture either. But we have a strong convergence of national interests. So, Russia does feel the pressure right now because of the Ukraine war. Obviously, it feels the pressure, and it does need allies. It does need a huge market for selling oil, because that is what relieves the pressure from Russia. So yes, it does need that. For that, from that perspective, India is something they really need. So yeah, it's a great thing for them. But it's not like they are playing a short-term game. It's a long-term game, and India and Russia are going to be aligned for the long term, for this entire century. One could imagine, if not more. So that's the deal. There's no love. There's no love in geopolitics. There are alliances, and alliances typically are temporary, and even enmities are temporary. But in some cases, these alliances can be long term, and enmities can be long term. When you have this border thing. Okay, I think that was a reasonably long explanation. Let's take some other questions. All right. Mm, yeah, okay, Atharva Raj says, what's the geographical expanse of Aryavaarta? Is it just northern India or the whole of the Indian subcontinent? Look, it's the whole of the Indian subcontinent. That's what it is. Even this is the problem, right? They have divided India into North India and South India, and Aryan and Dravidian. So we all see everything from these perspectives only. North India versus South India. The whole of the Indian subcontinent was called Jambu Dweepa and Aryavarta. That's what it was. And the Indian subcontinent included present day Pakistan, the temporary nation, and also Gandhara, which is present day Afghanistan. Even when Shri Chinggis Khan uh, came into India pursuing Jalaluddin Mangubardi, the border between India and Central Asia was somewhere in Tajikistan. Okay, there was some what hot gates or something it was called. I don't remember right now, but yes. So So that's the geographical expanse of the Indian subcontinent. It was the entirety of Jambu Dweep or Aryavaarta, the whole subcontinent, not just North India. So I understand where this question comes from, and yeah, it's see, the fact that lots of people have these questions is a good thing. They are wondering what they've been taught is right or not, and what we have been taught is a lot of lies, a whole bunch of lies. So what we need, all of us, my friends, is to learn the art of and the science of critical thinking. We have been taught what to think instead of being taught how to think. When you come across a textbook, how do you know whether it contains facts or opinions or a mix of both? And how do you know that so and so paragraph is a fact and so paragraph is an opinion? That is where critical thinking comes in. That is something we all need to learn. And I mean, I could go deep into it. It will take me at least at least an hour to explain that. But yeah, so we all need to figure out in our own way how to think. So I believe I know how to think, but I really would like to urge and encourage and exhort all of you, please try and analyze your thought process and try to figure out how it can be improved. Like I say, keep raising your standards. Am I a Dhoni fan? There's a match going on now, right? Mumbai Indians and Chennai Super Kings, yes. And Dhoni is CSK. Yeah, of course I'm a Dhoni fan. Of course, I mean he's one of the greatest cricketers we've had, one of the greatest captains we've had. Great guy. I mean, what's not to admire? So yes, of course I'm a Dhoni fan. Let's see what else. What else do we have? Um, ABCD. What your thoughts, your views on Ashoka University? Should I join it? I regret that I don't really know much about this institution. So yeah, I won't be able to answer because I don't have much knowledge about it. But yeah, you should do your due diligence, and if it is good according to your viewpoint, you should certainly join it. Which team do I support in the IPL? I haven't watched a single IPL match this year. Uh, whoever plays well, I'll support them. Uh, I've never had a favorite as such. Um, I remember I watched the first IPL. I think it was in 2007 or 2008, and the next year they had to play it in South Africa because the elections were there. Which year was this? 2014 was 2000. Yeah, 2008. I think was the first IPL. Yeah. Anyhow, so I don't have any specific favorite team. I haven't watched a single match this year thus far. Um, so yeah, thus far nothing. But if some team plays well and catches my attention and grabs me by by the throat, yeah, then I'll certainly support that. All right, let's see what else do we have. Lots of questions, of course. Um, uh, India helped Turkey by launching Operation Dost, but still Turkey is very much anti-India. Then why did India help Turkey? Sir, don't call me naive. No, absolutely not. I will not call you naive. It's a very good question. We have to ask these questions so that we understand the world better. All right. So, yes, Turkey was struck by two horrific earthquakes, very powerful earthquakes. It caused a huge amount of devastation in the nation. Lots of people died. Sadly, very unfortunate. And India was one of the first responders. Without being asked, we went ahead and launched this Operation Dost. We sent teams of medical personnel to Turkey, lots and lots of equipment and supplies to Turkey. We set up field hospitals over there. We sent search and rescue teams with trained personnel and teams with dogs as well. So we did a whole lot. I think we were one of the major responders and helpers for Turkey. But Turkey is still very much anti-India. Yes, a big surprise. So why did India help Turkey? So there are reasons why we do things. Listen, if there is a crocodile, listen, I'll not use the word snake here. I'm just giving an example. Okay, let's not take it personally. Anybody, if there is anybody from Turkey here, listen, I have absolutely nothing against Turkey. I think Turkish people are actually very interesting people, very fun people. All right, nothing against Turkey at all. But overall, India and Turkey are not aligned. Turkey's geopolitical alignment is with essentially India's enemy, Pakistan. So it's not a personal thing, people to people. I'm sure we are all friends, but nation to nation, we are adversaries. So we have to understand that if you go ahead and help a crocodile, it doesn't mean that if the crocodile gets an opportunity, it will not try to eat you, right? So then the question is, why did India do this? So India is building a track record as a responsible nation and a responsible member of the international community, a nation that sets certain standards and behaves in a certain manner, and even helps enemies when it's required. So once you, and you have to do this consistently. You do this this strategy, this doctrine, whatever you want to call it, only started sometime around 2014. Before that, India was not a global geopolitical player at all. It was not even a local power. India was not respected anywhere in the world. Now India is building a track record of a certain kind of behavior internationally. So in the future, when India rises, India is rising, by the way. Once we are, let's say, a $10 trillion economy, we're going to have a certain amount of economic and military muscle, and we want to use it in a way that is non-abrasive, and we want to get our things done. But we also want to tell the world that we are a responsible nation, and you need not fear us. Eventually it will reach a stage, once a nation reaches a certain size economically and militarily, people start wondering, should we fear them? That's what happens. So, and if everyone fears you, then what happens is what's happening with China. China is kind of isolated. Yeah, sure, they are able to, they still have a lot of influence, they still have not a lot of money to throw around, which buys them influence, and that's why they're able to do things. But overall, everybody fears China. Everybody fears China. Everyone in Asia around China, let's take a look at the map once again. Everybody, look at China's neighbors, everyone fears them. No one trusts them. But of course, they will be enticed by the money that China is able to spend. So when India is rising, we have to ensure that we build a track record that will ensure that people, the other nations, don't fear us. And it also helps us to counter US propaganda. The Americans and the West overall, they have been trying to portray India in a certain manner. Authoritarian nation. Some stupid journalists use the word fascist, undemocratic, all that. So when India does these things, it kind of it hurts these fake narratives, and it kind of destroys these fake narratives. So there are multiple reasons why India is doing this. Overall, it's for image building. Image building is called soft power, right? So it doesn't cost a whole lot of money from India's perspective to go and help Turkey, right? If you take a reasonably large city in India, and the amount of money it takes to run that city for one day, I'm sure we did not have to spend even that much for the operation Dost in Turkey. Yeah, a few aircraft, heavy aircraft we sent there, a few personnel. I don't know, and our people were there for I don't know how long, a few weeks or something. So overall, I don't think it cost a lot of money, but it creates a certain image of India in front of the world. And among the Turkish people who were helped by us, it definitely builds goodwill. I mean, they'll remember us. They'll remember what we did for them in their time of need, desperate need. So these are the reasons why we do it. We don't expect anything in return, but we are building a certain narrative and a certain image of ourselves, and a track record for ourselves. That is what's happening. So even when you had the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, we sent vaccines all across the world, especially to poor nations and nations that could not afford the expensive American vaccines that don't really work. There are terrible vaccines. Our vaccine probably is the best vaccine out there. So we sent these vaccines. We did not sell them. We sent them for free. The Americans will sell you stuff and then they will call it aid. That's the hypocrisy. They will sell you stuff for a lot of money, and then they will say we are aiding you. They call their military sales to Taiwan aid. you know So India did not do that. We sent it for free. So once again, we are building a track record as a responsible nation, as a good nation, as a benevolent nation. It's going to help us in the long run. That's why we do it. Martian says, "What do you think about Nostradamus's prediction of World War III?" I had a book of which was about Nostradamus. I found it very interesting. I mean, it seemed to predict the 9/11 attacks in the US. A city at 45 degrees, fire comes from the sky. Very interesting. It did also predict Napoleon and Hister. Napoleon sounds like Napoleon, yes, and Hister sounds like Hitler. So it's curious, you know. I mean, some of it was very striking and very interesting to me. So I don't know what if there is any mention of World War III in that or not. There are these quatrains in which he writes, these verses in Old French. So yeah, I don't. It was too long. I mean, it's been so long. It's been like 20 years since I, held that book in my hands. So I don't remember what the predictions were like about World War III, if at all. I think it sounded like there was a prediction that India will rise in the 21st century and become a great power, or something, a superpower perhaps. So I don't quite remember, but I found it very interesting that this guy who lived before Napoleon and Hitler was able to write about that. Is it a complete coincidence, or is there something more to it? I still don't know, but I think it's very interesting. Okay. All right. Let's see. Tejas says, "Why do Afghanistanis claim that the Vedas originated there? Do they?" I'm sure people make all kinds of claims. I suppose some of the Afghans would claim that the Vedas originated there. I think everybody wants to own the birthplace or of the Vedas, right? I remember there was this retired general on Twitter a few years ago who said that the Vedas were written in Punjab because the Saraswati used to flow through Punjab. Well, the Saraswati flowed through the entire subcontinent, the western part of the subcontinent. So, um, so we don't quite know where the Vedas were written. They were written within the sacred land of Bharatvarsh, Aryavaarta, Jambudvip. We know that, and most likely, the Saraswati is called the goddess of wisdom and knowledge. So most likely the Vedas were written somewhere along the banks of the Saraswati, the great Saraswati river, which no longer is with us. She has left us because we are so stupid. Yeah. Um, and clearly the Saraswati did not flow through Afghanistan. Uh, the Saraswati flowed from the Himalayas all the way into the Sea of Saurashtra, the so-called Arabian Sea. And if you look at the undersea topological map of the Indian Ocean, you can actually see ancient drainage channels of rivers that no longer exist, including the Saraswati. So let's put the map on the screen, not like this, but like this. Yes. So the Saraswati, it drained somewhere, maybe along the mouth of Gujarat. Gujarat looks like a face. So somewhere here is where the Saraswati used to drain out into the Indian Ocean, and she eventually started drying out. That's why we had the run of Kutch that was created, and the Thar Desert as well. And now she is simply a seasonal intermittent river called the Ghaggar Hakra. So the Vedas were most likely written on the banks of the Saraswati. So clearly that was not Afghanistan. Afghanistan was northern part of India, Gandhar. But obviously, everyone wants to own the Vedas. Everybody wants to claim, some kind of connection or ownership. And in Afghanistan, obviously, we know that their culture and everything has changed. They no longer practice Indian culture and Indian religions, and yet there is some connection, obviously, because they're still, after all, genetically, ethnically our kin, right? The Pashtuns. I'm not talking about the other ethnicities. The Tajiks, sure. The Pashtuns, mostly, sure, but not the whoever else, the other ethnic mixes out there. So if they are in the if some of them claim it, it's because they may feel a certain connection perhaps to India, whether they acknowledge it or not. But, well, they also can claim to be uh, part of our heritage, because I'm sure their ancestors also, at some point in time, we know that they were all part of Indian culture. Not anymore, unfortunately. Okay, this question has to be there. POK, isn't it the right time to take back? I get this question like 27 times at least per day in the comments. No, this is not the right time to take back POK. Maybe in 6 months, maybe in 2 years, maybe before 2024, or maybe in a decade, but soon enough. See, as we know, Pakistan is a temporary nation. We have to have a bit of patience. We will win. We will regain POK. Eventually, in the long run, the entirety of undivided India will be unified again. Eventually, not now, not next week, not next month. Eventually, in the next 50 years, 100 years, because right now it's not appropriate, or it's not good for us to reincorporate those regions into India because of a variety of reasons. Uh, so it's not the right time to take back POK. When is the right time to take back POK? The right time to win is when victory is inevitable. The best way of winning is to win without firing a single shot. So we have to engineer a situation in which POK automatically on its own comes back to us without us firing a single bullet, a single shot, or losing a single life. That's how it has to be. So that is the ideal way in which we want to take back POK. It should just fall into our arms. That's how it should be. So this is not the right time to take back POK. The time will come. Patience. Right. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? What else do we have? This question. Suraj Jha says, I wanted to know, are Balochs pure Iranian race, or are they mixed Indian Iranian? There is Mehergarh and there was Indo-Parthian kingdom called Paratha Rajas in Balochistan. The Paratha Rajas were pure Indian, proper Indian. If you see their coins and all, they had swastikas and trishuls and all that. And their name also was Paratha Rajas. So it's clearly Indian. Now, ethnicity wise, the Iranians aren't that different from us. Yes, the genetics are kind of weird. I mean, there's very little R1A over there, the patrilineal haplogroup. I think it's more of R1B or more of R2 or something. So it's clearly very, very close to India. But if you look at the detailed genetic profile of Iranian people, you will see a lot of affinity with the Turks, with Azerbaijan, and the what other places do we see? Azerbaijan and Iraq, Turkey, etc. So what happened, unfortunately, in the about 1300 or so 1400 years ago, is Iran was overrun by the Arabs, and they lost their sovereignty. And eventually, all these invaders came and settled down, and that's why there was this ethnic mixing. So many Iranians are not that close genetically and ethnically to Indians anymore. The pure Iranians are essentially the same as Indians, but I don't know how many of them actually still exist, if there is such a thing as a pure ethnicity or whatever. So if you take the typical stereotypical proper Iranian, it's a person with light brown skin, brown eyes, and dark hair. That's how it is. But you will see some Iranians who have got blonde hair and blue eyes and almost white skin or whatever. So those are not the real Iranians actually. So when it comes to the Balochi people, they are pure Indian. Okay, they're pure Indian. And if you mix Indians and Iranians, you get Indians only. So that's what the Balochis are. Their language sounds Indian more than Persian, way more Indian than Persian. Their culture is more like the culture of Saurashtra, the way they the kind of clothes they wear and all that. And Saurashtra, anyway, is almost next door to Balochistan. If you see the map, so Balochi people are ethnically Indian. Culturally, I'm not sure where they are right now. They're kind of somewhere in between, but ethnically Indian, historically Indian. Their heritage is Indian, but yeah, their history is tragic. History in the past, since 1948, is tragic, and even before that, the past few hundred years before that, it was still tragic. Let's not fall. Okay, all right. Om Bekerikar says, is Europe really a separate continent? Well, let's find out. Where is the map? What does the map tell us? So let's take a look at the continents. Strya is a continent. Strya, Australia. Antarctica is a continent. See, as you can see, there's ocean all around it. It's totally isolated. So is Antarctica. Africa is also connected to Asia by this small sliver of land, which has now been sliced open by the Suez Canal, Al Suez. And you have the Strait of Gibraltar, which separates Africa from Europe. So Africa is a separate continent. Now you have the Americas, which are connected by this very thin sliver of land through Panama, but you clearly have two distinct continents, North and South America. Now let's take a look at Europe and Asia. Do you see any division anywhere? There is no division. It's a single landmass. It's an enormous landmass, smaller than Africa. I'm not sure if it's smaller than Africa. So it's a single landmass. So it's a single continent. You could call it Eurasia or whatever. So why is this? Why is Europe considered to be a different continent, and why is Asia considered to be separate? Europe actually is a tiny little part of Eurasia. So the division is totally imaginary and artificial. The Europeans, once they became world conquerors in the past 500 years, started imagining that they were somehow superior to the rest of humanity. So they said that the place where we live is a separate continent of its own, just because we are better than all of you, right? So the separation between Europe and Asia is entirely imaginary and fictional. You know, in cities, in urban places in India, we have these gangs of dogs who live everywhere. See, the Indian dog has been part of our life, part of our history and culture for thousands of years. I'm sure we are the ones who first domesticated the dog from the wolf. So dogs, they live in these packs, families, or gangs, or whatever you want to call them, and they have these imaginary boundaries. You know, each pack of dogs has its own territory, and you will have territories that are adjoining each other. There are imaginary boundaries, and if a dog from a neighboring territory crosses over to your territory, this imaginary line, then all the dogs from this side will start barking at him. Get out, go back. So these boundaries are entirely imaginary. Similarly, the boundary between Europe and Asia is just like those boundaries that dogs have, completely fictional, completely imaginary. Right, let us see. Surinder Singh Rajput says, is pole shift real? So we have, our planet has poles. Let's go to the map. So here is our planet. The North Pole is up here in the Arctic Ocean, and the South Pole is within the continent of Antarctica. And the Earth spins, as we can see. Meow. It spins like a cricket ball when you are spinning it. Yeah. So the axis of the spin is the two ends of that are the North Pole and the South Pole. So those are the axes. So that's the rotational axis of the Earth, and that's the North Pole and the South Pole. But we also have magnetic poles. So the Earth has a magnetic field because inside the Earth there is this hot. Below the crust and the mantle of the Earth, you have a magma layer, which is molten rock, and beneath that, if you go further deep inside, you have molten metal. And at the center there's a solid metal core, which is not molten, it's solid. So because you have extremely hot molten metal inside the planet, which is swirling around, that activity, it is ionized. I'm sure at some points, some of it is ionized. You will have electrical charges, and it's flowing. So these moving electrical charges, they create a magnetic field. So the Earth has a magnetic field. It has two magnetic poles, a North Pole and a South Pole. Now the North Pole and the South Pole, the magnetic poles are created by the movement of the inner liquid ocean of metal inside the Earth. Now this movement keeps changing from time to time. So every few thousand or 100,000 years, the poles, they shift, they flip. So the North Pole becomes the South Pole, kind of, and the South Pole becomes the North Pole. So this is a real phenomenon, and we can see the traces of this in the geological record. Yeah. So pole shift is real, and it will have certain consequences. It could be detrimental consequences as well. It is something that is real. It will eventually happen. The north magnetic pole will suddenly become the south magnetic pole, and it seems that some reports that we hear say that the process may be already under motion. Perhaps, let's see. So it is indeed real. It's a physical phenomenon for sure. All right. Who could be the next foreign minister? Well, we have a wonderful foreign minister, one of the most competent foreign ministers we've ever had, Dr. Jaishankar. Why do we want to think of the next foreign minister? I would like to see Dr. Jaishankar be the foreign minister for another 5 years at least after 2024. So, yeah. And so, so I don't know. Yeah, I would like to see Dr. Jaishankar continue for the foreseeable future because he's not an old man. I mean, he's reasonably young. And I don't, I mean, I see him easily doing the job for another 10 years if he wants to. Okay. Uh, Ubendran says, what if we tell China that if they keep causing border issues, we will stop following the one China policy? How will China react to it? Listen, uh, try and understand it like this. Let's say you have a tiger and a cat. Okay. A very crude example. The tiger says, I have a certain territory and I will grab other people's territories. And then I will say that you have to follow the one tiger policy. My territory is a single policy, a single territory, and everybody has to follow the policy. And the cat says, I will not follow it anymore from tomorrow. What's going to happen? Who is more powerful? We have to see it that way. That's how it works in geopolitics. Size matters, power matters. It's not about being polite and being nice. That's not how geopolitics works. Geopolitics is pure power plays. The larger your economy, the larger your military, the more powerful you are, and the more you can get done. So you can insist that other nations follow the one China policy if you're powerful enough, and the others have to do it. So it's not about words, strong words, kadi ninda. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Words don't work. You should be in a position to walk the talk. So right now, India need not do all that. Right now, India should hide its capabilities and bide its time and work really hard. And when the time is right, we will, instead of telling them that we will do this or we will do that, we'll actually do it. That's how it is. Chaitanya says, what's your opinion on Pali Persian similarities? Listen, Pali is a language that came out of Sanskrit. It's an Apabhransha language. And Persian is another language that came out of Sanskrit. It's also an Apabhransha language. Yeah. Old Persian was very similar to Sanskrit. The Persian that was spoken during the time of the Hakshamanish dynasty, the Achaemenid dynasty, during the time of Kurush Vajrak, which is Cyrus the Great, and Darius. So at that time, if you see the old Persian that they wrote using the cuneiform script, it sounded like kind of mispronounced Sanskrit. So today's the Persian language is a descendant of that language. So clearly there will be similarities between the Persian language and various Indian languages. Persian people, Iranian people who come to India, let's say for studies, and they stay in India for a couple of years, they pick up Hindi extremely easily, and they can speak Hindi like a native. And I'm sure that if Indians were to go to Persia, we could pick up the language very easily because there are very close similarities, lots of similarities. So it's not a surprise whatsoever. Okay, let's see some more recent questions. General says, do you think Bharat should procure state-of-the-art fifth generation fighter aircraft or wait for AMCA? If yes, which aircraft should be the best pick for IAF? The F-35, the F-32 Raptor, or the Su-57? I think the best way forward is to be completely Atmanirbhar, completely indigenous manufacturing. It's not an easy process, I understand. I agree. It's not easy, but it's worthwhile. Because you're gonna build the capability to do so many things. If you can master the art of designing and building and testing and perfecting one aircraft, the same capabilities can be applied to a whole lot of different kinds of aircraft. So India has to be Atmanirbhar. It's going to take time. It's going to take, the AMCA will take, I don't know until what time, 2029, 2032, somewhere around that time, maybe another 8 years. Let's say another 10 years, let's say. it's fine, it's worth it. So in the meanwhile, maybe we can buy some aircraft as a stopgap measure. uh, if you buy American aircraft, you have to give up a lot of your sovereignty. You have to ensure there is a lot of interoperability. You have to sign certain agreements and open up your spectrum, and it's not something you want to do. You don't want the Americans to start snooping on your networks and all those things. The Americans don't even spare their own allies. The Australians, for instance, when they sold the Australians the FA-18 Super Hornets, those aircraft were completely useless because the Americans had kind of disabled them. Um, the IFF system and all that, if friend or foe, and the target acquisition system, all that. So we don't want to buy American fighter planes, the F-35, and they will not sell you the F-22 either. F-35, I'm sure they will be willing to sell it for the right price, maybe $150 million per piece or whatever. So yeah, I think if we have to buy something in the short term as an interim measure, we could go with the Rafale. And if the Russians can, give us a good deal like TOT, transfer of technology, then we could look into the Su-57. Most likely it's going to be the Rafale, not the F-16, FA-18, or whatever, the F-22, F-35. Most likely the Rafale. Um, so yeah, that's what I think should happen. We should be Atmanirbhar. We should invest in our own manufacturing capabilities and prowess, and we have extremely talented people. So it's certainly very feasible. We should wait for the AMCA, and we should, once the AMCA is out, we should start building other kinds of aircraft. So that's what we need to do, my friends. Okay. Yeah, this question, I mean, we don't have evidence, right? Chirag says, is it true that King Vikramaditya had the largest empire, which was ever probably bigger than the Mauryan Empire? Are there any evidences of it? So our archaeologists have found no evidence because they've not searched for it, and they claim that the King Vikramaditya, Emperor Vikramaditya, was a complete myth. Evidence may be lying around, but if you don't look for it, then you will never find it. And if you find it, you can claim it's something or the other. So we don't know. So for me, I rely on evidence, hard evidence, and I am not going out there in the field looking for evidence, right? So I have to rely on what the archaeologists are telling us. And clearly, I'm sure you all know that we all understand that our archaeologists are not entirely properly motivated, and they're not. Some of them are good. Clearly, some of them are good, but most of them, I don't even know what they're doing. So, in the absence of evidence, I would say I don't know. We don't have evidence of how large the empire was. We don't even know for sure when he lived. Most likely at the beginning of the Vikram Samvat era, for sure. But we don't have the evidence because our archaeologists have either hidden the evidence or they have not tried to find it at all. So, in the absence of evidence, I cannot offer you a proper answer because I don't have one. I can offer you some wild speculation and imagination, but what's the point of that? Right? It's not going to help you or me. So my answer is I don't know because there is no evidence. In the future, there could be evidence, and one would hope to find it as soon as possible. Saurabh asks, what's the source of modern numerals, Indian or Arabic? The Arabs learned the numerals from India. The decimal system, the numerals, all of it came from India. I think it's a no-brainer. The source is India, not Arabia. Uh, okay. What other question did I have? Here we are. Spartan Bhagwa says, how much did the Turkic genocide of India and selling of Indians into slavery outside of India affect India's genetic diversity? So, the Turkic genocide of India, it was a significant genocide. I mean, it's the worst genocide ever perpetrated anywhere in the world. So, India's population over about 500 years or so, roughly, fell by 80 million. So, you had people being born at the regular rate. So the population should have stayed the same, or it should have grown, but it declined by 80 million over a number of centuries. So if you do the math properly and think it out properly, it means that hundreds of millions of Indians were killed. That's what it means. So maybe minimum figure is 100 million, maximum figure is maybe 500 million over 5 centuries or so, which means a million a year, which is something they were doing routinely, right? So it did affect India's genetic pool diversity, whatever you want to call it. Selling of Indians into slavery outside of India was something that was happening on a very large scale. It was typically women and children, and obviously men who had certain skills, artisans, stonemasons, architects, musicians, all that. So it did not affect India's genetic diversity within the Indian subcontinent, but it spread Indian genetics outside India. You go to Yemen, or you look at images of Yemeni people, they look just like Indians, but they speak Arabic. Their culture is completely Arabic, but many of them look exactly like Indians. There are lots of people in Saudi Arabia who look strikingly Indian. There are people in Iraq who look Indian. Some people have been even claiming that Saddam Hussein was a Rajput, right? Saddam Hussein, that he was a Rajput. I mean, if you look at Saddam Hussein, he does kind of look somewhat Indian, little bit. Same kind of skin color, similar facial features, and all that. Um, so clearly, Indian genetics spread across the Turkic and Arabic world, right? So it kind of spread India's genetics in a very tragic and unfortunate manner in the Turkic and Arabic world, for sure. So that's what happened. Serge Ant says, are Romani people and the country of Romania related? Well, it sounds like there should be a relation, but it's not quite the case. If you look at the nation of Romania, and if you look at the population demographics and all that, I would say about roughly 10% of the population of Romania is of Romani origin, Gypsy Indian origin. Yeah. Um, and yet the nation of Romania, the name doesn't come from the Romani people. So it's entirely a coincidence. The Romani people are related to India, and they were not the founders of Romania, and the name Romania doesn't come from there. So the relation is entirely, the similarity of the name is entirely coincidental. There's not a genuine connection there. Itachi says, is there any benefit of learning Japanese as an Indian? Which foreign language should one learn according to you? That's well, if you want to interact with Japanese people, and if you want to maybe go and visit Japan, maybe stay in Japan for a while, if you're doing business with Japanese people, or if you're interacting with them on a regular basis, it makes a lot of sense to learn Japanese. It's always fun to learn new languages. So that would be the benefit in case you need to have interactions with Japanese people. That would be advantageous for you. The other question is, which foreign language should one learn according to you? Well, look, who am I to tell you what language to learn? I can tell you what Indian language to learn. I will insist that everybody should learn Sanskrit. So that's what I can tell you about Indian languages. When it comes to foreign languages, it's entirely up to you. It's your choice. Whatever you find interesting. Some people find Japanese interesting. Some people want to learn French. Some want to learn Italian. We all speak English. Why not Swahili? Swahili is from Kenya and Southern Africa. Or what about Russian? Or what about what else? People want to learn Mandarin these days. Mandarin, which is Chinese. I think one should try and learn Mongolian if somebody has the interest. I don't know. See, it's entirely up to you. It's your choice personally. It's entirely your personal choice. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you when you learn a foreign language, it takes time. It's kind of a long process unless you are completely immersed in an environment where only that language is spoken. In that case, you can learn a language in like a week if you are in that sort of environment, if you really apply yourself. So I don't think there's any specific language which should be learned. I think it's entirely a personal choice. Okay. Um, what other questions do we have? Suraj says, I recently visited Malaysia and there were many occasions where they did not treat Indian people very well. Is there any reason behind this? I do not know. Um, if you look at the relations between India and Malaysia from a geopolitical government to government perspective, the relations aren't very good. Because of certain provocations that Malaysia has done in the past few years. Uh, and India did retaliate at some point in time by by halting the purchase of Malaysian palm oil. India most likely was the biggest market for that, so that kind of hurt Malaysia's economy. So the relations aren't very good between India and Malaysia, and it's because of the attitude of the Malaysian government. It was the regime of Mahathir Mohamad, I believe, which was the uh, culprit at that time. Mahathir Mohamad himself is of Indian origin, by the way. I think from his mother's side or father's side, one from Kerala. Um, so I don't know what the attitude is in Malaysia towards Indians, but you are reporting that there were some occasions or many occasions where they did not treat Indian people very well. So either it's because of the geopolitical thing that India and Malaysia, the governments don't get along very well, or maybe it's a cultural or religious thing because our culture and religion is different from theirs. I mean, overall, our culture and religion is our own. In Malaysia, it's entirely different. So maybe that could be the possible reason. I don't really know because I've not really paid attention to Malaysia. It's not that important a nation. I'm sure it's very important for the people who live there, but from my perspective, I have not really being been paying attention to it too much. Utkarsh Sinha says China will be renaming cities in Arunachal Pradesh. How should we reply to it? Can we rename the regions in Tibet? If yes, what's stopping India? Like I said, cat versus tiger. Right now, let us be the cat and let the tiger roar. Okay, we are also not a very small cat. If the tiger tries to come into our territory, we know what to do with the tiger. But words don't really matter. Real actions matter. If the Chinese actually try and come and try to take our territory, we know exactly what to do. Right now, they are simply provoking us and trying to uh, lay the foundation for a future opportunity that they may get in the future. If they do get, then they will like to claim it. Uh, so right now, India should let's say officially lodge a protest at most, and apart from that, we don't need to do, the government need does not need to do anything. What we can do is we can publish our own maps of Tibet with the original Tibetan names or Sanskrit names. That's what we could do. Nobody is stopping us, the citizens of India, from doing that. So that's how we can reply to it. From the government's perspective, the reply is going to be response, if any, is going to be very measured, very calm, and we're not going to give a knee-jerk response because that's what they would like, you know, to make us seem like we are rattled. So the government is going to have a very calm, measured response. But we, the citizens, can do whatever we want. So why don't we? Some of us, I mean, there are lots of people watching. Some of you will have Photoshop skills and whatever graphic design skills. Why don't you create a map of Chinese occupied Tibet with Sanskrit names or Tibetan names? That'll be fun, and let's promote those maps and put them on social media. That's what we could do. What's stopping us? Nobody's stopping us. Yeah. So we can rename regions in Tibet. We can even rename regions in Yunnan, because Yunnan itself is not really Chinese. Even Inner Mongolia is not Chinese. Even Manchuria is not really Chinese, Han Chinese. So yeah, there's a whole can of worms in there. When it comes to China, right? What else? Um, Dungar Singh Chauhan asks, did ancient India have any stimulant or caffeinated drinks before coffee and tea were introduced by the British in the 19th century? So, yes, coffee for sure came from the Middle East, maybe from Arabia. Tea could have been in India before that. If I've not really researched the origins of tea and when it was introduced into India. But so the real question is, did India have any such stimulants that were consumed? So I think some Indians have this habit of chewing betel leaves and betel nuts and all that. That I believe gives a kind of a kick or something. I've never done it myself. Uh, so that was there. I am sure tobacco must have existed and people would have chewed tobacco. I'm not sure where tobacco came from and if it is something that grows in Eurasia. But if it was there, then that could be a possibility. But if you go to the Vedic times, there is obviously the mentions of somaras. So somaras was a stimulant. It was not an intoxicant. It was a stimulant. It's something that warriors would drink, consume, before they went into battle. It gave them this, extra energy. It was like an energy drink of some kind. It was called somaras, and there's so many copious references to somaras in the Rig Veda. So yeah, that's the original stimulant that our ancestors had, but we kind of have lost track of what it was. It used to be stalks that were pressed, and the juice used to come out of that, and that was consumed. But which plant it was or tree it was, we kind of seem to have lost the understanding or knowledge of what it was. One of the candidates is ephedra. Ephedra is it's a plant that grows in the northern parts of India, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Himachal Pradesh, etc., Uttarakhand, Uttaranchal, and also in Central Asia. So that kind of ties in with the claims of the Aryan invasion theory. So that's something that people like to cite. But there is no evidence that ephedra is the plant in question, the Soma plant. So the Soma plant, its identity has been lost. So we don't quite know. But yes, it was the original intoxicant in India. Tejas says, your views on the removal of Mughals from NCERT textbooks. I, you know, history should be factual. I'm very clear about this. And if bad things happened, we need to be taught those bad things so that we can confront reality. And only when we confront reality and confront our past will we be able to move past that and go into a bright future. Because right now, what we have is that we are not taught certain things. Of course, in the textbooks, they are over glorifying the Mughals or glorifying them. Uh, there will be simply one chapter about the Maratha history of India, about the great Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, and there will be like one. I'm sorry, not one chapter, one paragraph, and there will be one paragraph about Subhash Chandra Bose, and there will be entire chapters about the Mughals. So that is just wrong. What we need is a balanced treatment, and we need to be taught about what these people actually did to India. They were not some great benevolent rulers. They were horrific barbarians who did all untold atrocities in India. So that's what needs to be taught. Unfortunately, we try to brush all these bad things under the carpet because secularism and whatnot. I don't know what it is. Um, so I would say that we should not remove any part of history from textbooks, but we should keep it, but we should approach it factually. The true facts have to be put forth. And I think, it's politically not expedient at all and very dangerous to do such things. They keep on pushing it to the future. Future generations will do it. So we're gonna stay stuck where we are, unfortunately. So my view is very clear. History has to be factual. We should not delete or expunge any part of history. We should be taught that. That's what I very strongly believe. Okay. What else do we have? Dr. Jaishankar Supremacy says, what do you think should the government replace the great Mahatma's picture with Netaji's picture on our rupee notes? I think we have given the Mahatma, the Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Mohandas Gandhi, many decades of our time. I think we, it's time to move on. We have so many great people who have walked the great land of India and who have served the motherland. So why not give them also the recognition and the honor and the tribute that we can pay to them by having their picture on the currency notes. So one of the candidates that comes to mind immediately is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. The other I can think of is Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. We know what he looked like because we have portraits of him, and we also had obviously many great kings and rulers in the past whose portraits we don't have, so it's kind of hard to put them on currency notes. So I would imagine it will be more recent historical figures who would have to go on his on rupee notes. um, so yeah, maybe it's time. I don't know. It's up to the government to do that. But the problem is that the government will not do such a thing because it's dangerous. It's dangerous because you're going to lose votes. Most people still believe that Mr. Gandhi was a great Mahatma. He was a politician, right? But he has been marketed as a Mahatma. That's a kind of brand building that has been done, and that's still politically very convenient. So it won't happen anytime soon. It looks like. Rishabh says, is it possible to become an athlete, boxing, powerlifting, weightlifting, etc., and study or do a job at the same time? It's certainly possible to look. It's certainly possible to stay fit. Stay in shape. You can certainly spend a day or an hour or so every day in the gym. Let's say 90 minutes a day in the gym. I mean, going and coming will take some time and all, but 60 minutes a day, you can certainly do that. And you can stay really fit in those 60 minutes. So you can do boxing sessions, powerlifting sessions, weightlifting sessions, all that in the gym. You can do that. But being an athlete typically means that you are doing track and field activities, which take a lot of time. So if you want to be a proper athlete and compete in events and all that, you cannot do that and also study or have a job at the same time. But you can certainly have a job and go to gym every day and stay very fit. You can certainly be a student, study full time, and also go to gym every day and stay fit. But you can't have a job and also be a competitive athlete. That's impossible. Well, as far as I can say, it's impossible. I'm sure some superhuman people can do it, but for most of us ordinary people, it's more or less impossible. Right. Okay. Okay, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin says, guys, create a map of Chinese occupied Tibet. I would exhort all of you to please go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that, and tag me on Twitter or whatever, or we'll find a way of publicizing these maps. Please do that. Okay, all right. The Indian Navy is pushing for a third aircraft carrier. Do you think it's a smart decision? I remember you saying that the Navy should focus more on submarines, corvettes, etc. There is a logic that you have to employ. Let's take a look at the map. Look at the Indian coastline. It's an enormous coastline. And the area of our interest, our strategic interest, is the Indian Ocean region north of the equator, all the way up to the Strait of Malacca, all the way up to the Strait of Hormuz, and all the way to the Gulf of Aden. That's our region of interest. It's an enormous region. So if you have a single enormous ship, an aircraft carrier, it will have a certain radius of influence. And it's also going to be a place where you are concentrating all of your lethality and you're investing a huge amount of money. An aircraft carrier costs anything between $3 to $10 billion. Let's say we go for a third one, which will cost, let's say $5 billion, all invested. You're gonna put, let's say, 50 aircraft on it, helicopters, all that stuff. There's a whole lot of investment in just one place, right? And there's a whole lot of lethality in one place. It's an incredibly enticing target for the enemy, whoever it is. And you have to defend it using lots of other ships. You need to have at least one submarine patrolling the area. You need to have at least 3 to 4 destroyers and a whole bunch of other ships protecting the aircraft carrier. So it's not just those $5 billion worth of money that you're investing much more. It's extremely expensive. And what do you get out of it? You can control a certain area, but it's also dangerous. In the same money, if you invest in, let's say, 50 different ships of different kinds, you can more effectively control a much larger area and distribute your lethality over a much larger surface area of the ocean. Does it not make more sense? I'm just talking logically. I have nothing against aircraft carriers. I think they're majestic. It would be fun to be the captain of an aircraft carrier. It would be like the greatest flex that you could have in the Navy. But that's not something that serves our national interest. We already have two. So I don't know what the Navy's logic is. Okay. Obviously, I have never served in the Navy or in the armed forces. So you could claim that I'm an armchair general, but there is a logic. There's the logic of strategy. And a lot of the great strategists never served in the armed forces. One of the great strategists of all time has been on our channel, Dr. Edward Luttwak. He did serve in the military in his youth. Uh, so I'm not sure what his opinion is. I think he has also said that we don't need that India should not have more than two aircraft carriers. It's not necessary. That money can be used elsewhere to distribute our lethality. If you have, let's say, 50 ships or 100 ships spread out over a large area, how many will you take out? They will all have their own defenses. So it's easier to take out a single aircraft carrier by concentrating a whole, let's say, hail of missiles. But if you have so many ships spread out, it's very hard to take them all out, and they can always take you out. So it makes sense to have to invest that money in lots of different kinds of ships, submarines, corvettes, destroyers, and whatnot, instead of putting everything in, all your eggs in one basket. So yeah, that is my perspective. Maybe the navy doesn't exist, and doesn't agree with me. Okay, Pakistani claims that Parini was born in ancient Pakistan. We don't know exactly where Acharya Panini was born. He was born in the Indian subcontinent, which was all India at the time. Now, we don't quite know the location. Maybe it was the Suvastu Valley, which is now called Swat, which is temporarily part of Pakistan. So it doesn't matter what. See, Pakistan itself is Indian territory. Okay, it's a temporary matter that it's currently what it is. So Pakistan did not exist before 1947. So even if somebody was born in what is now Pakistani territory before 1947, it doesn't make that person Pakistani. Okay, that person was Indian. So it's all it's kind of a joke what these people do. We don't need to take them seriously. Right. Okay. What next? What next? Harsh says, were there any special military units in ancient India like the Spartans? Well, I'm sure we would have had all kinds of elite military units and all that, but the records of these things are all lost because of the destruction of our great ancient libraries. So all the records of our history were burned down by the barbarians who did this. So we don't quite know how armies were organized, what sort of cavalry we had, what sort of infantry we had, what siege warfare equipment we had, if any, um, mounted warriors, elephants used in warfare, all those things. What sort of logistical arrangements did we have? An army runs on logistics. Logistics is the key to any military success. Logistics is all about supplies and communications and all that. That's the boring work, but that's what keeps an army in going. So obviously all of this would have existed. Logistics is a very interesting field and a very complicated field, very hard, very difficult. So you're always running into problems in logistics, but you have to fix them, solve them. So we don't know how it was done because we have lost all the records of our past. So I don't know, I don't have the answer, but it's a very good question you're asking, and I'm glad to see people asking such interesting questions. All right. Okay, other questions. Atharva says, just a day ago, Rolls-Royce, the aircraft engine manufacturer, confirmed an export license for combat engine technology transfer for the AMCA fighter. Will this set the stage for India's indigenous jet engine production? So I haven't seen this news yet. Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing this. So it's what you're saying is that they confirmed export license for combat engine technology transfer. If there is, see, export license typically means that you can they can export something to your country. That's what it typically means. It could also be interpreted as you can build it in your country under license, and they will send some kits or whatever, you can assemble it over here, and some components you can manufacture over here. That's the other interpretation. When you're saying technology transfer, that is something that I would imagine that Rolls-Royce would not want to do, because that technology they have developed over many decades. And why would they transfer it to another nation? Uh, if they're actually doing technology transfer, that's wonderful. That's good for us. But I am kind of skeptical about any such news report. I think that we're gonna have to do it the hard way. Maybe work with the French and maybe pay a huge amount of money for the technology, but eventually we will have to do it. Uh, so I don't know what's quite happening. I will look at the news report and maybe then we can revisit this part of the thing. But it's an interesting report that you have brought out over here. Okay. What else do we have? We have lots of questions. D says, I'm a student, science student, 12th class. I want to take advice from you about for my future profession. How can I do so? Listen, I can only advise you about what profession you should take if I know you personally. Only if I know you personally, if I know your likes and dislikes, what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what your aptitudes are. Only when I know you personally can I give you an actual advice. So the best thing to do is to take advice from somebody you actually already know in person. You know, so that's what I can tell you. Maybe somebody, a teacher or a professor or some elder person, somebody with experience. Go to them and tell them that what your what your future plans are, what your future hopes and aspirations are, and because they know you personally, they'll be able to guide you much better than me. I would be able to guide you because I don't really know you, right? Okay. Devansh says, why is Russia silent on Finland? So Finland has joined NATO, isn't it? Okay. Do we know where Finland is? Let's go and find Finland on the map. Where is the map? So we know where India is, then we go westwards into Europe, then we go into northern Europe, and we have the nation of Finland over here. Here we are. The capital city is Helsinki. Helsinki. And it's quite close to Petersburg, St. Petersburg. So Finland has recently, in the past week or so, if I'm not mistaken, joined NATO officially. So the question is, why is Russia silent on Finland? See, what Finland has done is they've done what they've the thing has really changed. Finland was already very strongly in the US and NATO camp. So this is simply putting the stamp of finality on that, stamp of approval. So now it's official. It's rubber stamped. But the situation hasn't changed. Finland was already very much part of the Western alliance. So so there's no point talking about it, and Russia doesn't need to react to it. I'm not sure if they've spoken about this or reacted to it. Chirag says, why doesn't India have more vassal states? India has never been, in the past 70 plus years, a powerful nation. India became a nation state in 1947. Since then, India has pursued a path of extreme mediocrity because of our leaders. It's only in the past, let's say decade, that India has become a nation that's now beginning to rise to its potential. But before that, it's all been mediocrity and low standards. So when you are a mediocre nation, when you are not powerful, when your economy is not growing, when you don't have significant military might, you're not going to have vassal states. You will not have a big sphere of influence, and when you don't have a big sphere of influence beyond your borders, how will you have vassal states? It just doesn't make any sense, right? Doesn't make any sense. So that's why. And also, we don't believe in we have a certain way of doing things. It's a cultural thing. We don't bully other nations, we don't colonize or occupy nations, and we don't take vassals. But let's see how it goes in the future. So that's the reason why historically, in the past, let's say 200-300 years, India has not had vassal states. You go back to the Chola times, the entirety of Southeast Asia was our vassal. Yeah. And the Kushan times and Gupta times and all, it was all different, a very different scenario. Okay. Oktar says, I'm good at only mathematics. I have passed the 12th standard exam. What should I do? Well, you are facing the kind of dilemma that Srinivas Ramanujan faced. He was good at only maths, but he was a genius at math. Uh, so listen, once again, I don't know you personally, so I cannot give you advice. I can give you very bland, generic advice that I can give to anybody, but that won't help you. And I can't give you the advice you really need unless I know you personally and understand what you're all about. So once again, I would say that what you should do is go and seek out somebody who is experienced, somebody who will who will care for you and who will want to take you in the right direction, and take their advice. That's what I would say. Because without knowing you personally, I really cannot give you the right advice. All right. Please talk about Putuluri Veera Brahmendra Swami. I'm sorry, it's a very long name. I'm not able to. Putuluri Veera Brahmendra Swami. Unfortunately, I don't know who that is, so can't talk about them, about this person. Sorry. Okay, let's see what else. What else? What else? What else? What else? Should India adopt gun culture for personal safety, just like the US, considering the increasing incidence of clashes among communities? Listen, if you have an increasing trend of increasing clashes among communities, first of all, I am not seeing the trend. Okay, these clashes or whatever it is, these frictions have always been there, but only now what the thing is that it's all coming out on social media. It's always been there. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying it's always been there. Not always, but for a long time. Uh, so, should India adopt gun culture? Let's say you have tensions between two communities, three communities, whatever, and they don't have guns. So, whatever, if at all any violence happens, it's going to be limited to a certain kind of thing. But imagine now everybody has guns. Imagine what can happen. So, I think the answer is not that everybody should have guns. That's not the answer. The answer is better policing, better enforcement of the laws, and the rule of the law. That's what needs to happen. Gun culture is not going to help anybody. Gun culture is very dangerous. So we know what happens in the US. Every other day there's an active shooter somewhere. It's terrible. It's tragic what's happened to the nation. That's what they have done to themselves, unfortunately. It's very tragic. Okay. Ayushman Singh says, why did America not nuke Tokyo? I am not sure if they had plans of nuking Tokyo or not. Um, so I think they nuked Hiroshima first and then Nagasaki as a means of warning the Japanese government that, look, this is what we can do to you. And if you don't surrender, maybe Tokyo is next. So I'm not sure if they had made plans to nuke Tokyo, but they certainly had the ability. So maybe they wanted, see, when you defeat a nation and when you take over a nation, you want to take it as much intact as possible. You don't want to take over a nation that is flattened and destroyed. Yeah. So it makes sense to leave it as undamaged as possible. And when you take over a nation, le- think from the perspective of an invader, a colonizer. When you take over a nation, you want a ready made system that will now serve you. So if you destroy Tokyo, all the bureaucracy and the government machinery will be destroyed. Then you will have to train people and set it up all over again, which is a very tedious, long, and time consuming procedure. So that also makes sense. And that also could be a reason why they did not nuke Tokyo. And maybe they kept it for later and they did not have to ever use it. So these are the possibilities. I'm not really sure if they had plans of nuking Tokyo. Maybe they did, perhaps. I mean, it would make sense for them to have such a plan. Right. Dhur Jati says, can India survive AI technology, digitally colonizing our businesses and dictate terms as West owns most of the AI? Rajiv Malhotra says so. Please answer. Uh, I think India can certainly do very well in AI. All the AI startups, all the AI companies, everything that's available online, it's all Western, it's all American. Chat GPT, OpenAI is American. Bard, Google's AI is also American. We also have Bing AI, which is also American. So all these AI companies, etc., they are all American. And obviously, if you rely on them entirely, it's gonna end up, yeah, you could say, digitally colonizing your nation. So India obviously has extremely talented people. I'm sure many of the people who are working in these AI companies and startups are of Indian origin, right? In the US, so India has no shortage of talented people. But the question is, why does India not produce the next Google or the next Facebook, the next Twitter, next Instagram, or the next Chat GPT? That's the question, right? I think Indian business people are very risk averse and they want to put money in a very safe thing. They don't want to do a lot of R&D, which is risky and you may lose money. It takes time. They want to see returns on their investment immediately. That's why nobody is investing in these speculative ventures. Look, AI 3 years ago was completely speculative, right? You could train all these neural networks with enormous amounts of data, but you did not know what's going to happen. You could be optimistic and you could hope for your the way you're doing things go well, but maybe you're going to lose all that time and all that money. So these things are risky. The biggest rewards come from taking risks. So India can certainly, create its own AI systems. We have data. We have a huge amount of data ourselves, but we don't quite leverage it. So if things continue the way they are continuing, then yeah, India could get digitally colonized by the West. So we have to be aware of this, and hopefully somebody starts an Indian AI company or multiple Indian AI companies. That will be great. Because the one thing that you also see, uh, if you use these AI systems, is what I have spoken about a very long time ago, like 2 years ago or something. I think, no, there is. I don't think, I know for a fact that on this channel there is a clip of me answering a question about algorithm bias. So there is something called algorithmic bias, which I have gone into detail about in that clip. So we are actually already seeing algorithm bias in some of the answers that these AI systems give you. You know, they are trained to do certain things. They are constrained in certain ways, and the answers they give are, you could, if you know how to where to look, you can see, you can tell that there is a bias implicit in all this. And that's because of the kind of data these AI systems were fed when they were trained. So yeah, so India needs to, ensure it's not left behind in the AI race. Okay. Jay Dikshit asks a very interesting question. The princely state of Kalat, Balochistan, after independence, wanted to join India and not Pakistan. And Oman asked India to have Gwadar. So why did we refuse? Wasn't it a strategic land? Yeah, well, you're right. The Khan of Kalat, the last Khan of Kalat, wanted Kalat to accede to India, not to Pakistan. And Kalat is a significant portion of Balochistan. So essentially, the Khan of Kalat was the de facto ruler of Balochistan itself. So he wanted Kalat or Balochistan to accede to India, to become a part of India. And Oman wanted India to have Gwadar. And what happened is that we got neither Gwadar nor Balochistan. We gave it all up and we refused the Balochi request to accede to India, and we refused the Khan of the Sultan of Oman's offer to take Gwadar. So why did we do it? That's a question that will need a detailed explanation. It will take at least 20 or 25 minutes to bring out all the patterns. But what I can tell you is that the great Shri Jawaharlal Nehru made these choices, and there are no real logical explanations for these choices. Makes no sense whatsoever. But yeah, he did that. Okay. What other questions do we have? Um, Aditya says, what's quantum entanglement in Hawking radiation? Let's take the second one first. What's Hawking radiation? So we all think of black holes as these giant vacuum cleaners that suck everything in, right? But if you study black holes properly, you will see that black holes have a temperature. There is uh, black holes have a number of properties: mass, charge, and angular momentum. These are the three intrinsic properties that a black hole can have. And black holes also have temperature. It's called the Hawking temperature. And because they have a temperature, they radiate. So that's in very brief what Hawking radiation is. So black holes aren't dark; they actually radiate a flux of particles depending on the temperature. So if it's the smaller a black hole is, the hotter it is, and the more it will radiate. And the larger a black hole is the colder it is, and the less it will radiate. And supermassive black holes, depending on the size, will could actually end up being colder than the cosmic microwave background radiation temperature, which means that they will not radiate; they will accrete, and they're really really dark. They are genuinely dark. So that is what Hawking radiation is. It is the phenomenon by which black holes radiate. Quantum entanglement is it's where you have. So let me give you a very crude analogy. Entanglement. So it's when two particles are connected in such a way that they actually form a single system. So let's say you have one particle that is over here in this room, and you have one particle which has reached the Andromeda galaxy. Let's say many hundreds, maybe thousands, millions of light years away from here, and yet those particles are still connected to each other. And if you see one particle and measure its properties, you will immediately, instantaneously know the properties of the other particle, which is like light years away. So it's spooky action at a distance, faster than light travel of information. Looks like it appears like it is so, but it's not quite that it is what it is. So what do you mean by entangled particles? So think of it like this: I buy a pair of gloves, okay, a left-handed glove and a right-handed glove, and I put them in different boxes. I close my eyes, I shuffle the gloves together, then take one glove, put in one box, and take another glove and put in the other box. And I close the boxes, seal them off, and I send one box to my friend in Tokyo, and I send the other box to my friend in Paris. Okay? Now, I don't know which went where, and neither do the recipients. But when my friend in Tokyo opens the box and let's say finds that it's a left handed glove, then that person will immediately know that the person in Paris has a right handed glove. Right? And let's say instead of Tokyo and Paris, I send one to Mars and I send one to the Andromeda galaxy. So my Martian friend, when he or she or it will open the glove and it sees one glove, let's say it's a right-handed glove, he or she or it will know immediately that the one in Andromeda is the other one. So that's the kind of thing that's a very crude way of explaining what entanglement is. So when two particles are entangled, they have the same, they are the same system, and they are the wave they are described by a single wave function. That, I mean, I'm not sure if it makes sense to you, but that's what it is. So that's what quantum entanglement is. It's a phenomenon that happens at the ultra microscopic, hyper microscopic level, the subatomic level. All right. Next, what do we have? We have all kinds of other questions. Okay, let's take this one. Sunshades one says, we know about de-dollarization. How fast do you think it will happen? It has been in the news a lot these days. Your thoughts? De-dollarization. It's easier said than done. The dollar has been the world's reserve currency for a very, very long time, lots and lots of decades, ever since 1944, if I remember correctly, the Bretton Woods agreement and all the conference and all that. And the US is still the most powerful nation in the world. Its influence may be decreasing, but its power hasn't decreased. So yeah, of course they are doing all these stupid things like printing enormous amounts of money. Over one weekend they printed $300 billion worth of money, just created money out of thin air, because they own the currency, so they can do whatever they want. And clearly there is a trend, there is a desire among nations, Saudi Arabia, Iran, India, the UAE, China, Russia, etc., to move away from the US dollar. Because if you trade only in dollars and you deal only in dollars, then the Americans can control everything and they can cut you off from the system anytime they want, and they can destroy your economy. But if you are not using the dollar, then it's impossible essentially for the Americans to do that. And we have seen what the Americans have done in recent times to Iran, to Yemen, and in the latest instance to Russia. They cut Russia off from the SWIFT system, the international financial system, and they imposed those sanctions on Russia. But Russia has been able to withstand and those sanctions and do reasonably well. But imagine if it happens to your country. You don't want that to happen. So it makes sense to move away from the dollar and use other currencies. So India is now entering into agreements with a whole lot of nations for using the rupee as the currency of exchange for various uh, transfers of value. We also have the Saudis agreeing to trade in the yuan. We have the rupee ruble agreement and so on. So it's a process that's happening slowly. I don't see it happening very rapidly and the dollar going out of business anytime soon. But yes, there is definitely a trend to move away from the US dollar, and that trend may gather steam as time goes by. Lakshay Kaushik says, your thoughts on UFO or UAP and why India is not researching this phenomenon? Well, unfortunately, you don't see UFOs in Indian skies. These UFOs or UAP, un whatever aerial phenomena, they only seem to happen in the US. They only seem to bless the US with their presence. Uh, I can't remember see, nowadays everybody in India has cell phones, everybody has video cameras. So how come nobody is witnessing such things in over Indian skies? So we don't see any UFO footage or images coming out of India. If it is there, it must be very rare. So if it's not happening here, how do we research it? Should we send our scientists to the US that they can witness this phenomena? Over there, it seems to happen all the time. So so that's the reason it doesn't happen here. So the aliens, if they exist, they only want to come to the US. What sense does it make? Tell me. Okay. All right. Let's see what else. Grimzobad says, how to cope with society forcing you to follow the norms and force you to stay on the safe side. Yeah, well, you got to take risks. Of course, you can't take stupid risks. You need to first learn risk management by taking very small risks and seeing how it goes. So a bad example perhaps would be the stock market example. You could, let's say you have a bank account balance of, let's say, 1 lakh rupees. Okay, just a hypothetical example. So what's the example of a big risk? You take all the money and put it into stocks, and you don't have any experience, so you essentially gambling. That's a big risk. What you can actually do is, you, instead of taking that 1 lakh rupees, you invest 1,000 rupees every month in various stocks and see how it performs, and you do it for the next 3 years. Keep on investing 1,000 rupees a month. That's not a big amount of money. In that way, you will be able to gain a lot of experience and see how the various stocks perform. So that's how you do risk management. You have to learn it. Unfortunately, we're not taught these things in school. So yes, society will force you. The society will want you to stay in a certain lane. Society wants you to be average, be like everybody else, do what everybody else does, take the safe job, you know, do the same things. So clearly, you're not happy with that. You want to be different. So there seems to be something inside you that says that I want to be different. I want to be better, exceptional, whatever it is. So if you want to be different, it's certainly worthwhile, but it's not easy. It's a hard path. And yeah, people will try to dissuade you. People will try to make it difficult for you. People will make fun of you, especially if you don't succeed immediately. People will make fun of you. People very close to you will do that to you. So it's not easy. But the great people, they're all different. They all took the path that other people don't take. So how to do it? You have to first become mentally very strong, emotionally very strong. We Indians are ruled by emotions. We are very emotional people. So we have to put the emotions aside. Emotions have a place in life, but not everywhere. You don't need to make everything all about emotions. So you have to find a way of becoming mentally strong, and you have to know what path you want to tread, and then you have to follow the path and do it properly. Take risks, but not enormous risks, and that's how you do it. So that's what I can tell you in a generic manner, because I don't know exactly what your likes, dislikes, aptitudes are. But yeah, you have to find your own way. That's what it is. Okay. What should I do? Says Chirag. Do I do business or join the Indian Army as an officer to contribute to the country most? I am good at business and I'm 19. You should do what you are good at. There are 1.4 billion people in the country. I'm sure millions of them are really good at fighting. Many millions of them are good at strategy and tactics. Let those guys who really love it, who are made for it, let them go into the armed forces. In case you are better at something else, then you should pursue that. In case you are really good at fighting and you're really good at fitness and you're really strong and tall and you have a good strategic outlook and all that, then you should go for the army for sure, because you're good at that. But if you're already good at business and you know that, go for business and contribute to the economy in that manner. Create jobs, create products, do all that. So do whatever you're best at. That's what I would tell you. Okay. Can we trust press and journalism? No, you can't. You cannot. I'm sure there are some journalists out of 100, maybe there are two or three journalists who are entirely, completely 100% honest. And I'm sure that out of 100, at least 50 journalists will be good people. But even if you're a good person, you are still doing a job and you are paid by someone. You have a boss, you have an employer. And when you are paid by that person or by that organization, you have to do what they expect of you. If you disagree with whatever they want you to do, then you should not be on their payroll. And for most people, it's important to have a steady income. So journalism has become that sort of thing. People used to believe that journalism is this noble endeavor and it's all about truth and all that. It's not the case. Okay. Most news is, well, it's agenda driven. Most news actually is propaganda. Most journalism is peddling various kinds of narratives and propaganda. So, like I said, disclaimer that some people will be good, but overall, the majority of it is like that. So, you cannot trust the press and you cannot trust news reports and most journalism. Please be aware of this. Suraj Kumar says, I have no money for super chat. Well, I'm not asking you for money. I don't, super chat is turned off, right? So yeah, I turned off super chat. Like, I had tried it a few times, but what I found is that many of the viewers over here on the channel are kids, youngsters, students. And I've been a student. We have all been there. When you're a student, when you are a student, you're broke. You don't have any money of your own. So how can you expect students to pay money to ask to have their questions answered? So I realized this very early, and I turned off super chat. Maybe once or twice I may have turned it on just to see how it goes. But on this channel there is no super chat. You don't have to pay me money to ask me questions. Please, that is horrific. I don't believe in that. All right. More questions. Oh, we are already at 1 hour 50 minutes mark. Wonderful. Yeah. Good God, how to stop having suicidal thoughts? I I have no idea, because I've never been there. I would say please talk to your elders, consult a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever it is, and get some help. Okay, get professional help. I have no idea what would cause such things. Uh, One would imagine it would be depression or something like that, or something else. I don't. I am not an authority in this field. If you have such a thing, please immediately consult a professional. Okay, and please talk to your family, talk to your elders, talk to whoever you trust, and please take professional help. That's what I would say. All the best, sir. All the best. Please get well. Okay, some other questions. Let's see. Skelly says, why does no one see Russia as the next superpower, and why do people think that China and India are the only nations that can surpass Big Daddy USA in the geopolitical game? See, we know at what rate India is growing, China is growing economically, and Russia is growing. Russia's economy is not growing anywhere close to the kind of economic growth China had in the past and the kind of growth India is having right now. So economically, Russia is not is not in a position, because of simple mathematics. It's not in a position to surpass the US in this century. The Chinese also see what's happening to their economy. Their economy is contracting. Their GDP growth is has been negative in recent times. And even if it starts growing again, it will be like 2%, 3% per year, maximum 4 or 5%, if at all. So China is based on the trends and simple pure math. China is no longer in a position to ever surpass the US in this century economically. By the end of the century, China's population will be half of what it is today, and the average age will be most likely in excess of 60. Imagine the average person around you is 60 years old. That's the situation China is going to face. It's already getting there slowly. So China is not going to surpass the US. Russia, well, Russia has the world's largest military nuclear arsenal, and it has this enormous territory which makes it an autarky. An autarky is a nation that's completely self-sufficient in all basic things, all basic necessities, resources, metals, iron ore, coal, natural gas, petroleum, agriculture, all the basic stuff that you need to run an economy, everything is there. So Russia is really blessed from that perspective, but it's not growing economically, and its population is also slowly declining. You know, so Russia faces that problem. China faces an even more drastic problem, and the only nation that's projected or capable of surpassing the US economically in this century is India. That's the only nation, right? So Russia, I would say it is not quite a superpower, but it's a great power, purely based on the kind of resources it has, and also because it has the world's largest nuclear arsenal and the missiles and all the capability to deploy and deliver those nuclear weapons anywhere they want. Rilesh Kushwaha says, why is there no talk about Aksai Chin as much as we talk about Pakistan occupied Kashmir? Well, Aksai Chin is in Chinese hands. And for the longest time, we Indians thought of the Chinese as invincible because we have heard about 1962. Well, we are not taught what happened in 1967. There was another war between India and China, and we defeated the Chinese in that. In 1987, also, the Sumdorong Chu clashes and all that, we got the better of that. So, but your teachers won't teach you that. Your history textbooks will not write about it. The media will not talk about it. So you will not know about this, and you will keep having this inferiority complex that China is, invincible. So I think that's the reason why nobody talks about Sachin, because people feel in India that you can't take anything from China. It's just impossible. China is just too powerful, too strong. So that's why we talk about POK all the time. I get 17, 28 questions per day at least about when are we going to take back POK, but nobody asks about Aksai Chin. I think that's the reason why, because we have this image that's been created in our minds that China is invincible and India is no match for China, which is complete fiction. But yeah, that's why. Okay, let's see what else do we have. Ramai Raj Singh says, need a definitive answer. Was Lord Ram a non-vegetarian? Have Sanatanis been non-vegetarians, or is this a recent pickup? Listen, I don't know. I don't know. And if I answer one way or the other, it's going to create a controversy, and I'm going to get a whole lot of hate. That. So listen, I don't know. We have the incident of Lord Rama, hunting a deer because Lady Sita wanted the deer's skin. But then people have all kinds of esoteric interpretations of that. That that she did not want Rama to kill the deer. She just wanted Lord Ram to bring the deer back so that she could play with it. That's one interpretation people give. So I maybe they are right. Maybe what we believe is wrong. I don't know. So my answer is I don't know. Lord Rama was a king. He was a Kshatriya. Kshatriyas typically have been non-vegetarian, but who knows? In the old days maybe they were not. But when you are a warrior, you need a good source of protein, and meat is the easiest source of protein. But then when you say such things, it really offends people, and people get upset. So my answer is going to be that I don't know. I just don't know. What about people of India? Have they been non-vegetarians, or is this a recent thing? I think in India is a subcontinent-sized piece of geography. You will always have a huge amount of diversity of cuisine, of dietary choices, and all that. So it's India has never been a single monolithic, monochromatic, uniform ethnic group, right? We are bound together by one civilizational heritage. It's the civilization and culture that binds us together. But otherwise, the cultural diversity is immense. So you have people in India today who are purely vegetarian and who follow the same culture. And you have people in other parts of India who will eat fish, but they consider that to be vegetarian. And there are some people in other parts of India who eat other kinds of meat. So it's a very diverse place. So I think Indians overall have valued non-violence and vegetarianism, but there have always been, as far as I can understand, Indians in various parts of India, here or there, who have eaten meat. All right, let's take two, three more questions. Okay, let's see. What do I think about the Tate brothers? I really don't know much about the Tate brothers. They are very controversial, very much in the news, and they have very strong opinions, and they are like leading what they call the manosphere or whatever it is. I don't quite know. I have never watched a single podcast or interview of one of the Tate guys. Andrew Tate, is it? And I've heard. I know what the reputation is like. Very strong opinions and masculinity, and they are accused of being misogynistic and worse things as well. So my answer is I don't quite know, because I've never really had much of an interest in who these people were. So yeah, I don't quite know. But yeah, it's good that we discuss this about what's happening these days over here around the world. Okay, ISRO. Ani says ISRO and NASA have said that due to global warming, the coastal cities like Mumbai, Goa, Kolkata, etc., and other coastal cities in the world like Tokyo and so on and so forth, uh, by 2030, 2050, means you mean they'll go under the water? How much of this is true? Listen, climate change has always existed. So climate change is real. Anyone who claims climate change doesn't exist is, well, climate change has always been there. Ever since our planet was born, the climate has been changing. Now, obviously, the climate is changing now as well. And obviously, some of it is man made. So, there is a human made component to the climate change that we are witnessing now. Now, if you look at photographs of the Statue of Liberty in New York, taken 100 years ago, and if you take photographs today, the sea level is the same. The global warming has been happening, but the sea level is the same. So, I'm not saying that this means that the sea levels won't rise in the future. Sea levels have varied a lot in the past. I mean, about 10,000 years ago, the sea levels were about 150 meters below where they are right now. So sea levels will rise and fall. And right now, we are definitely witnessing a period of warming and a trend of warming every year, little bit more. So from that perspective, it makes sense that sea levels will indeed rise over time. So I don't know when it will happen. Maybe by 2050. I don't think you will see significant changes by 2030. But yeah, you may see changes by 2050, possibly. So we don't quite know, and it's still predicting these things is still a very the predictions aren't very accurate because our science, our understanding of science, and our modeling, etc., it will not be that good thus far. But yeah, global warming is indeed a thing. Sea levels will overall rise over time. How much in how much time we don't quite know, but yeah, some rise will happen by 2050, possibly. Okay, let me take one more question and then we are done for the day because it's already 2 hours plus. um how can India develop soft power? Like I said, by doing good things. Soft power is your reputation, you know, your reputation, which comes from your entertainment industry, from your culture, from your sporting performance, from how rich or prosperous you are, all these things. So the key to developing soft power is to develop the economy, which also develops your hard power, right? Okay. I said I'll take one more question. I will take one more question. Can a star exist without emitting any light? No, no. Stars radiate lots and lots of electromagnetic radiation, which is called light, which is photons. And yeah, you could have hypothetical dark stars made up of dark matter. It depends on what dark matter is made of. Let's imagine it's just purely gravitating particles that interact only gravitationally. Then yeah, if you bring sufficient numbers of particles together, it will form a very huge mass, and it could actually ignite under its own weight. It's interesting. Yeah, dark stars, they may still be dark, but they may radiate in the gravitational spectrum. But yeah, that's purely conjecture and hypothetical stuff. But apart from that, I would say that a star cannot exist without emitting any light, because otherwise it would not be a star at all. Yeah. All right, I guess we are done for the day. Do I see anybody else? How do one gain confirm what? I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Confirm. Yeah, I'm not sure I got what this means. Sorry. um let's see. Yeah, I took the stars question. There are a million other questions. um let me maybe take one more question. Samarth says, what was the original purpose behind alcohol except for entertainment? I i don't know what's the purpose of behind alcohol except for using it as a recreational drug. I mean, when a person drinks alcohol, it impairs the nervous system and causes a different kind of behavior, right? You're not quite in control of what you are doing. Your speech isn't normal. Your words will be slurred. Your control over the body is not the same. Drunken master fighting and boxing, it kind of imitates a style. So I think it's just a recreational drug. It's entertainment. It doesn't really have any health benefits or any such thing. Okay, I guess. Okay. Chiching says, how do you gain confidence? How do you gain confidence? You gain confidence by through practice. Let's say you want to become, let's just take the example of sport. You want to get good at playing a certain sport, or let's say, yeah, sport, let's say. So how do you build the confidence that I'm good? By practicing, investing hours and hours and hours, and doing it so many times over and over again that it becomes second nature. Then you're confident. Let's say you want to talk about public speaking, for instance. Another example. Well, the first time you're going to go and face a number of people and give a speech, it's going to be frightening for you. So you're going to start small. Maybe you should start by practicing in front of the mirror, or practicing in front of your phone camera, and do it over and over again. Let's say you do it for 20 days, 3 weeks. Then you get used to talking. Then maybe you can build you will feel that, yeah, maybe I can talk to 2 3 people. Then you go and do it in front of 3 people, and you do it for a few days. Then you will feel that, yeah, I can do it in front of 10 people now. So you do it in stages. But the thing is that you have to put in the hard work. If you put in the hard work, the effort, then it becomes second nature for you, and you become confident. So whatever field or skill you want to develop confidence in, you have to dive into it and do lots of repetitions over and over again. Keep on doing it, keep on doing it, keep on practicing, and then it is impossible for you to not become confident. And overall, as a person, how do you be confident? Some people are just overall confident, right? So it's by acquiring valuable skills and being able to genuinely contribute something to society. And how do you know that somebody has valuable skills and is contributing? Typically they'll be rich, because if you have valuable skills and you're contributing those skills to society, then society rewards you by giving you money. So typically such people who are achievers they end up being rich. And then if you feel that to be confident you have to be rich, but it's the other way around. Yeah. So it's about that. You have to be a valuable person for society, and you provide some value, and you have high value skills, and you're really good at that. That will automatically give you confidence. So that's how you approach it. Okay, I guess we are done for today. All right, so thank you very much everybody for all the questions. Tomorrow I am not going to do a live stream because I'm traveling, but as you can see now, the channel is going in a certain direction, and new videos are coming out every day with some editing and stuff, and it's going to continue. So please enjoy the videos on the channel. I will see you in the next live stream, which will hopefully be sometime around the next weekend. So until then, take care, and I will catch you very soon. Take care, all of you. See you soon. Bye. Good night. Good day. Bye bye.